All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to EcoForge. This is our second podcast. We are very excited to be here. The first one was nervous, but yet still a success. I said terrifying 60 times. Probably, if I could change one thing about the past episode, it would be the overuse of terrifying.
Yes.
But I was terrified to do it. Little less terrified this one, but still probably terrified. It'll take a while to get accustomed to this, I'm sure. So this one is for our topic today, we are going to be talking the dreaded politics. It is not a subject that I wanted to do per se. It's one of those topics where as soon as you say politics, you pretty much just lose people.
Yeah.
It's the problem is that if you're going to talk environmentalism, it arguably starts with legislation. So federal regulation, environmental protections, the EPA, stuff like that. It's if you really want to fight climate change, you're going to have to fight it at a government level. Then beyond that, you're going to have to fight it at a world level with all the different governments, with the UN and the Paris Climate Agreement, all that stuff. So if you want to talk saving the environment, it's impossible to do it without talking politics
And legislation.
So unfortunately, what candidates we vote for in this country and what their policies are will shape the environmental future. And we kind of wanted to do this to gear up for right now. You got the Democratic primary debates going on, and then next month is going to be one of the busiest months in terms of how many environmental talks are going on in this country. You got the third Democratic primary, which so far has been very heavy on the environmentalism. Coming up in September, you have both CNN and MSNBC are going to be hosting climate talk shows for the presidential candidates. You also have the UN coming here in September to, I believe it's New York, but don't quote me on that, in September as well. And so in 1 month, you have some of like the biggest coverages of just world leaders talking, how are we going to combat climate change? So unfortunately, that was something we just had to dive into. And let me tell you, after researching this, you got to really get into the weeds on this one. I mean, it's and not like good old Humboldt County. I mean, you're talking like Arizona tumbleweeds, goat heads everywhere. It's a hard topic. It really is. It's easy to get convoluted. So if you're not a big fan of politics, I understand. Bear with us. When we talk it, we are going to be talking about presidential candidates for a lot of this because they are shaping the environmental landscape right now moving forward, where depending on how this election goes could very easily swing our climate policy. I mean,
Well, it is also a pretty big topic in any of the presidential candidate debates. And I think it's such a hot topic that a lot of people are learning about the environmental field through these.
They're doing it there.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of information that's coming from people, and I don't think it's very clear. And we just kind of wanted to talk about it and kind of get a better understanding of what the heck they're talking about and kind of get a better understanding.
Yeah. And that's the big thing. So we will be talking politics, but in political candidates. However, it's going to be limited to the environmental topics. So we're not going to be talking anything else that the candidates are doing or what they've talked about or any other parts of their platform. It is strictly from the environmental aspect of it. And even that is you're getting into the weeds. There is so much, I don't want to call it misinformation. There's a lot of misconception, maybe a little bit of misdirection on what exactly the climate platform is for everybody right now, like
Yeah.
the landscape for everything. It's a very convoluted discussion. um I kind of wanted to knock this out now because the second presidential debate is still very fresh, and this is kind of preparing for next month because we're just going to be hit with an onslaught of climate talk. So I kind of
Yeah.
wanted to lay the groundwork for a basic understanding of going forward how you can comprehend and understand what's going on
Yeah.
next month. So if you do see any information coming out and you're wondering, what the hell these people are talking about, this should kind of give you a good general basic understanding leading into all these climate talks next month. So it's oh God, on a topic like this, where do you want to start?
Well, I think a really big one is what everybody is talking about and what has been in the news quite a bit, which is the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the biggest climate discussion at the moment.
Oh, and it's the weediest topic. We'd be going to the darkest hole right off the bat.
Do we wanna-
You don't want to start easy, do you?
Well,
you,
I
you
feel
just want to
like
go hard?
I don't know. I feel like it kind of goes right into the misconceptions that are about environmental reform.
Yeah. All right. We'll get into the weeds off the bat. I mean, just knock it out of the way.
I think everybody's wondering what the hell is a Green New Deal because it's never properly described and
Never.
nobody knows what it is.
All right.
Everybody's heard of it. Nobody knows what it is.
So I want to break down it into a couple different categories or subtopics. Because the thing is if we just start throwing out information on the Green New Deal, there's so much here in terms of what is the Green New Deal, who's behind all of this, what's the history of it, how's it being used in the presidential candidates' platforms and debates. There's a lot in this topic, and so it would be very easy to get lost. So do you think we should start with what people are very familiar with, which is the resolution that is proposed by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or do you want to start with the history of the New Deal and kind of lead into where she picked it up and how it became this very popularized and very media-driven concept that it is now? Because that's a hard one, because for most people, the story doesn't start 10 years ago. It starts with when they started seeing it in the news, which is very recently.
Yeah, I think it started last year.
Yeah.
I think when we first heard it. And to what everybody made it sound like is it was a new thing and that it just came into the landscape and
Right.
AOC, because I cannot say her name.
She's got a long name, so everybody has shortened her name to AOC, so we'll probably do that for the rest of this.
Yeah, it's an Alexandria chick, so sorry, I'm not even going to try and pronounce her name properly.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yep, see?
It's a tongue twister.
So AOC, it really sounded like this was a new thing that was developed, especially with the new Paris Agreement and, climate change looming. It was like a way to combat this. And
so what would you say is the biggest misconception about what everybody knows about the new Green Deal?
What it does and
See, I'd say what it is.
What it is, what it does.
Personally, I would say everybody has misclassified. They have a misconception of what exactly the Green New Deal that she's proposing is.
Yeah.
That's the big thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you go over what the current media perception is?
Well, let's see here. So like every media platform and even a lot of the environmental organizations, they've all done a thing on what is the Green New Deal, and they never describe it properly, and so a lot of people think it's this policy and legislation to reform the infrastructure and clean energy and stuff like that, and it's not really that.
Hands on the table. Sorry. You love to shake your camera at the very beginning. You're just shaking it everywhere.
I talk with my hands.
I know. You
and
just
the
can't.
pen.
You can't. Can't bang on the table.
So a lot of people talk about it as like a bold transformation of the economy, and like it's going to mobilize these resources and invest in these green technologies in the economy and create jobs and stuff like that. And so everybody thinks it's that.
Well, those are its goals.
Yeah.
Those are the goals of the Green New Deal.
Well, they're describing it as something that is going to implement these.
Right. It's not just a goal. It's actual legislation that's been written to accomplish this.
Once it's passed, it's going to implement these, and it's going to automatically set these things and get these things rolling. And
right.
As soon as it's passed, we're going to instantly start working on clean energy.
Uh-huh.
I feel like that's kind of the biggest of how people describe it.
Mm-hmm.
And from what Kale found out, is not true.
Well, that part is technically true. So the easiest way, because I had only heard what everybody else had heard, Green New Deal, and the way they pitch it and the way the media covers it, and even all the big environmental organizations, the way they talk about it is as if this was a bill.
Yeah.
That's the big key word there, is that if this was a bill that was full of policy and details and programs that were going to be implemented, and that the government was going to be voting on this and basically choosing on whether or not to implement it.
Yeah.
And so the easiest way that I kind of want to describe it to people I had to go deep on this one, and it sucks because it is so hard to get to the bottom of it, to get clarity for it. So the first thing I want to say is the Green New Deal is an interchangeable name that is used to describe very many things. So that's where it gets a little confusing, because it depends on which Green New Deal you're talking about and what aspect of it you're talking about, or in what format you're talking about it. So the main one that gets publicized is the Green New Deal is a concept. It's an idea.
Okay.
So the Green New Deal is it's an idea for a industrialized stimulus package. That's the easiest way to describe it. Where basically it's a very common misrepresented as a climate stimulus package. And it does impact the climate. The reason why I say that's a misrepresentation is because the climate is one small portion of the overall package.
Yeah.
So there's, I believe, 7 tiers is the way the newest one that AOC came up with, is there's like 7 main categories, and climate change is one of them. But you're saying to call something a climate change reform when it's only 1/7 of the overall goal is a bit of a misrepresentation, because they're also looking at social, economic, and infrastructure type things. So
yeah, that's true.
They're going to completely redo basically the entire American landscape. Like, I mean, it's gonna redo our economics. It's gonna redo our infrastructure. It's gonna completely change how essentially we do everything. So that's why they are calling it an industrialized stimulus package, because essentially when you call something industrialized, it means that every aspect of the American government, so every caucus we have, every committee, basically it's a full mobilization of the entire government in every single sector that is all kind of working towards a common purpose.
Yeah.
So, and that's why they say it's we're going to have to do the largest mobilization since World War II. That's like the most common thing I hear whenever people talk about the Green New Deal, is this mass mobilization, because it's not just going to affect climate change. It's going to
Yeah.
completely change our social aspect. It's going to completely
Mhm.
change the economic aspect, everything. So it fights a lot of the other stuff because like other parts of the Green New Deal are, guaranteeing people jobs, rebuilding all of our infrastructure, guaranteeing people clean water, fighting climate change, obviously. But, things like, some type of universal basic income or something to fight, when the robots take everything over.
Yeah. The AI.
Yeah, the fucking AI. Or what to do with lots of social inequalities.
Yeah.
So you have
It's like promoting justice and equity,
right.
and I think it even talks about like oppression of indigenous people
Uh-huh.
and immigrants. So it's not just environmental reform. There is the social aspect and social justice as well.
Yeah, economic justice, social justice, everything. So that's the goal. So that's the first misrepresentation I feel is that it's pitched just as a climate policy. It's not.
Environmental, yeah.
It's a massive reform of
Yeah.
everything. Um, it the easiest way to describe it is it's a sustainability stimulus package because those are all the aspects of sustainability. So there's a major difference between environmental policy and sustainability policy. We'll get into that later. But sustainability is kind of that all-encompassing umbrella as well, where you're not just talking about the sustainability of the environment, but also the sustainability of the economy, the sustainability of our social structure, everything. So that's the first major misconception. The second is that this is an idea. This is a concept. So the Green New Deal has kind of become this umbrella term for all of these different types of individual policies. So any social reform policies could easily be slid under the umbrella of the Green New Deal. Same thing with environmental policies, same thing with infrastructure policies, all of these things. But it's pitched as if this is a bill that is written. It's not. And that is the one clear thing that I want to, if I can stress anything in this entire podcast, it is that when you have a bill is a piece of legislation that has a bunch of policy in it that basically the legislative branch of the government can vote on. It gets sent to the president. The president has the chance to veto it. And then this gets put into law. So this is a law-binding agreement. This is now United States law. It would change. That's when everything would change.
Yeah.
The Green New Deal is not that. So the Green New Deal is not a bill. It is not a policy. It does not have any of these things yet. So when people are talking about all of these goals of the Green New Deal, you're talking about a dream, a concept. This is what they want the Green New Deal to do. So we want to get to 100% clean renewable energy, right? So that's one of their goals. However, there's the Green New Deal that is pitched right now is only 14 pages long. There's no way you could get something that would that was actually the first giveaway for me, was that I read it was only 14 pages long. I'm like, wait, so you're telling me this policy that's going to completely change the American landscape like never before is somehow 14 pages long? That seems, for the most complex policy arguably to ever be put out, it's 14 pages. Okay, something's a little fishy here. So there's some fuckery involved. So that's actually what made me go and look into it. And I went, oh, it's not policy. This is 14 pages of goals, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's simply goals that they would like to accomplish, but they didn't write any policy for it. But it's pitched as if this is a 1,000-page policy reform document that's a bill.
That's going to be legally binding.
Right. So it's that's a major problem. And I know you said you were looking up even major environmental websites.
Yeah.
That do you have one up?
Mm-hmm.
So here, I'll have her read it. I don't have it queued up for the video, so I'll just have her read it off. What is it, the Sierra Club?
Yeah, this is from Sierra Club, and they're pretty well known, big environmental.
Oh, major. They're one of the oldest.
Organization. Yeah, they've done a lot. And so they wrote an article on what the Green New Deal is. And like the first paragraph, this is word for word what it says. A Green New Deal is a big, bold transformation of the economy to tackle the twin crises of inequality and climate change. It would mobilize vast public resources to help us transition from an economy built on exploitation of fossil fuels to one driven by dignified work and clean energy. Which makes it sound like it's going to pass these laws that will, transform the economy and make us go to clean energy and reform inequality. But and I think there's a lot of people that have this misconception.
That's the concept.
Yeah, that's what it's saying, like that's what it's going to do, but this is what the New Deal wants to accomplish.
It's what it hopes to do.
Yeah. It's not passing any legislation, it's not passing any bills. It's just something that the legislative branch wants to work on in their future bills.
Right. And so that's the first clarification. So when we're moving forward, I'm going to try to refer to this as the Green New Deal concept.
Mm-hmm.
So because that's essentially what most people are talking about when you hear the Green New Deal, you're talking about the concept, the dream, the idea of these are the goals and this is what it wants to accomplish. But none of that policy has been written. None of this legislation's been written. No one's actually worked out the details on how we accomplish all of these goals. So they talk about it as if it's a concept idea. I just feel like it's heavily misrepresented as they've done all the policy work and the details, and they've actually finalized legislation on it.
Yeah.
So that's a major problem that I have.
And so how long did it take you to figure this information out?
2 straight hours. Yeah, I had to go deep, and I mean, I probably went through 100 different articles on the Green New Deal, and I got so fed up with it that I actually just went to the government's website and I had to look up what was actually submitted by AOC.
Oh.
And it so basically everything that gets submitted through the government, it has a number. And it'll have little letters in the front of it. So this one was like HS 109. I forget what the number was on it. But you can look it up. Just, go to the government's website and type in Green New Deal. It'll pull it up. I looked it up and I'm like, okay, this is not a bill. And so I had to, or sorry, not HS, it was HR. So it was I think it was. Anyways, it's, I digress. What I found out is you go to it and it is a resolution. So it's what's called a simple House resolution. So she submitted a House resolution called the Green New Deal, and that was first submitted about a year ago, and then they submitted a new version on, I believe, February 7th of this year. So a couple months ago, they submitted a revised version. So now you move back to the second aspect of it. So this is what I'm going to call the Green New Deal resolution. So as opposed to the Green New Deal concept, which is this idea that everybody's talking about, the Green New Deal resolution is what you're talking about when you see AOC in the media and what she's proposing, and when her and Bernie are saying sign this bill, all this stuff, or not, or join us, right? They don't say sign this bill, but because it's not.
Sorry, you can't vote on this.
Yeah, you can't. So basically, it's what they're trying to get passed is a House resolution. And so I had to look into this and go, okay, so what is a Green New Deal resolution? And that's where, I had to go brush up on my high school legislative branch knowledge. And
I'm pretty sure you didn't cover this topic.
It's bad. So there's a major difference between a resolution and a bill. I don't want to get too crazy.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's a resolution is kind of like an acknowledgement, or they're acknowledging that we should look into something, or we should acknowledge that this exists, or the easiest way to describe it is it's an acknowledgement. So what would the Green New Deal resolution in specific do? So say AOC got this passed, this thing that's been in the news that she's been trying to get passed. What would happen in that 14-page document that would, What would it actually accomplish? If it's not a bill, it doesn't have any policy, what would it do? So the Green New Deal resolution that they're trying to get passed would create a committee. Ooh, I know. Sounds fancy. So basically, it would create a committee that would allow different congressmen to join this committee and essentially write policy. So it's
focused on
right the goals.
Yes.
So that 14-page document that lists all these goals is basically what they want this committee to look into and accomplish.
Does it have to be specific? So like they have, clean energy by 2030 or 2050. What if they create legislation that only does it till 2040?
Doesn't matter. There is nothing binding about a committee.
Okay.
So a committee is an acknowledgement to look into something. So they could look into the Green New Deal and go, fuck this, and not do anything. They don't have to.
What bullshit.
Right. They could look into this and it could say, 2030, that's our goal. And they go, nah, 2040 is good.
Yeah.
So when they write the legislation, if they even write it, they're not even required to write anything. But if they write it, okay, they can completely ignore parts of the goals or change information. There is nothing binding about that kind of 14-page document that says that you have. It's just it's a placeholder. It's a goal. Like I said, you may not make it. The other thing is that there's already committees out there that pertain to a lot of these subjects. Mm-hmm. So we already have an energy committee. We already have a transportation committee. We already have, an economic committee. So there was a lot of worry that there was going to be overlap. So that's why this committee is like at the lowest power that you can possibly have for a committee, because committees have the ability to do different things, from subpoena information to, who gets to write the legislation that gets submitted, a whole bunch of different things. Because there were so many stronger committees that already pertain to a lot of this information, this had to be what's a simple committee. So it's the most basic bitch committee you can possibly have. It can't subpoena. It can't do shit.
Question.
Right, nothing. So they can't even submit policy to be voted on. They can't even write the bill themselves. What they have to do is they have to write what's called a draft bill. And a draft bill is just like the name implies, it's a draft. And then they have to take that draft and give it to one of the stronger committees, and they basically take that draft bill under consideration, and then they can alter or change or not even do anything with this draft bill and move forward. Sorry, what?
Sorry. Do you know why they made it a simple committee? Is it just because there were so many bigger committees that have been in place for so long that they didn't really want to step on their toes, and so they decided to do a simple committee? You
couldn't have two committees that had power and say over the same thing, because what if they contradicted? You can't have multiple committees. That was the big problem, is that the Green New Deal was so all-encompassing that there were so many committees that already pertained to all aspects of it, essentially, for the most part, except for climate change. Climate change was that one that they used to have a climate change panel.
What?
And then they got rid of it.
Of course.
It was, I believe, from 2006 to 2011. They got rid of it. So that was actually, to take a little side journey. So when the AOC... how she came to fame was she worked with the Sunrise Movement. They kind of made each other. They brought each other both to fame.
Sorry. From what I read, the Sunrise Movement kind of promoted her and they endorsed her. And so I think she was already kind of running for in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, she's a congresswoman.
Congresswoman.
Yeah, do you differentiate? Do you just call everybody a congressman, or do you say congresswoman to congresswoman?
You say congresswoman. Huh. In the debate, somebody accidentally, I think, called one of the girls congressman, and they're like, oh, sorry, congresswoman.
It's just one of those things. Like, you call everybody a mailman. Doesn't matter on your gender. You're a mailman. You carry mail.
That's
Anyways,
sexist.
I didn't know if they made a
Distinction.
differentiation. Yeah.
What was
But
I
they
saying?
kind of made each other.
Yeah, and they started promoting different candidates for the House of Representatives and maybe even the Senate, and that's how AOC got elected.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think because of AOC and how she became popularized, especially through this Green New Deal, the Sunrise Movement also gained popularity through that.
I think it all came to a catalyst when they did the protest in Nancy Pelosi's office.
Oh yeah, the sit-in.
The sit-in. So that's because
Yeah.
I guess that was like her first day. It was like her orientation or something, and she like went and did that, and gave a speech there, and supported everybody. So in response to that, Nancy Pelosi actually started a new committee. So a new committee did come out. It wasn't the Green New Deal, but because there are so many other committees that already had oversight over major areas of the Green New Deal, they said, fuck all that. We're going to make just a climate committee. And so they did. They made a new committee on climate science or some shit like that.
Is this a climate change committee you were talking
Climate
about?
change committee, yeah. So they made a new committee.
But that was in 2006?
No. So they had a climate committee that was ran from 2006 to 2011. So they said, if you can't do the Green New Deal, let's bring that back, because I guess that had wider scope or something. I don't know the specifics. They were trying to get Nancy Pelosi to do that or to sign in, promote the Green New Deal. She did not. She created an entirely new committee, which she probably narrowed the scope on it down. And so she created a new one that was specific to climate change, and basically put on, I forget her name, Kathy something. She got put as the chairman of that new committee. So that's how they both kind of came to fame and how all that came out. So you go back to what is this resolution then that she's promoting? And she's still promoting it. She still wants this committee. So that's where I think the second greatest misconception is if there's a difference between this concept idea, it's not a bill, and then you look at the resolution and go, okay, it's a committee, and you go, okay, well, what exactly would this committee do? And so, like I said, the committee writes draft legislation. So they'll bring in scientists, climate activists, whoever, economists, everybody. They'll talk to them, and depending on what they hear, they'll come up with this policy, and they'll draft a policy proposal. And that proposal then goes to one of these other committees, and those other committees can choose to take this and make it legislation. So all this sounds extremely far-fetched, right? Now, why are we talking about all this before we get into the presidential debates and for the Democratic Party? So their general idea is that they knew this wasn't going to be able to write anything more than a draft policy. Okay, so the goal is get this committee, start talking to people, and then this draft policy could be used as a policy platform to combat climate change and all these other aspects of the Green New Deal, economics, infrastructure, transportation, everything. This would give policy for presidential hopefuls while they were doing the Democratic debates. And so that is why we're talking about it, because as most people know, it did not get made into a committee. So the reason why I wanted to clarify all of this is because when we talk about a presidential candidate, because we want to go into their platforms. That was the main thing, is we want to talk policy platforms from all the people running for president, because these people right now have arguably the most control over how our climate goes in the future. Because right now we have a president who believes climate change is a hoax, doesn't believe it exists. He's a climate change denier. He's putting people in power of things like the EPA and stuff like that who are climate change deniers. So right now we have a landscape of a political party that is fighting for climate change, and then the Democratic Party has kind of picked up the torch of people fighting against climate change.
Yeah.
So you're kind of, it's weird. You're kind of seeing the blue party kind of bleed over into the green party, and then where the fuck does that leave the green party? They're like, shit. Now there's two
There's
fucking
nothing for us to
right. That was their
advocate.
entire platform. Thanks, Democrats. You just stole our entire platform. Which ironically, little fun fact. That's, if you go into the history of the Green New Deal, that's where arguably kind of where the Green New Deal started. So the Green New Deal has been a part of the policy platform for the Green Party for a decade. So the Green New Deal has been around for forever. This idea, this concept.
Well, this idea to get environmental reform passed, right?
Correct. Well, no, like beyond just environmental reform, to have basically to redo everything. There's been
okay.
that. So the Green New Deal was the policy platform for Jill Stein the past 2 times she ran for president. So in 2012 and 2016, I believe. And I even believe a basic version of the Green New Deal was part of Bernie's platform, but I don't know to what extent. He's never really had environmental policy as part of his platform, but I don't want to get sidetracked. It's been around for a while. It is, a lot of people think that the Green New Deal was created by AOC. It's not. She kind of just came in and picked up the torch, but
Yeah.
some version of this has been around. But once again, we'll get into that later. The main thing is to look at why they were trying to write policy, these draft policies for the Democratic Party. So the Democratic Party's kind of picked up the torch as, you know, they're going to join the Paris Agreement. They're, going to get climate change, hopefully, down.
Yeah.
Versus the Republicans, which are still very much on board to climate change is a hoax, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So that's the important piece of information, because this committee was never created. No policies were ever really made. No bill, no draft legislation. So we have an issue right now because we have the presidential debates are going on right now. We got, right now, 25 people in the presidential campaigns. The debates are seeing about 20 people. Yeah, 20.
There's 20 total.
And a good majority of these debates, you hear people respond to climate questions with, well, I support the Green New Deal and rejoining, the Paris Climate Agreement.
Yeah.
So when people hear this, people are thinking, oh, well, they support this bill, this legislation. And so that's one thing that I wanted to make clear. When you hear a politician say, I support the Green New Deal, they are strictly talking about, I am promoting this concept or this idea that is based in zero policy whatsoever. They don't actually have hard policy when they're saying that I support this concept idea.
Yeah, there's once again, it's kind of like goals and things that they want to work towards, but there isn't any plan or how to reach those goals.
There's no details
in the Green New Deal idea. I don't.
Concept. It's
sorry.
a Green New Deal concept. So dude, that took me 2 hours. I mean, I had to go deep because everybody talks about it as a concept, and very few people talk about it as a resolution or a committee. It is out there, but it's very misleading. They don't really give you. There are a couple articles, but the vast majority of information is, the concept, and they're promoting the goals and the idea. So, because this committee never got started, there was no draft legislation for these politicians to run on for their policy.
Yeah.
So moving forward, now that we're kind of out of the weeds of the fucking Green New Deal, and we'll talk about the Green New Deal kind of as its own concept and what we like and dislike about it and everything later. But we kind of wanted to talk about the presidential candidates and the debates and everything. So hopefully you made it out the other side of that tunnel with us.
There's light on the other side, sort of.
No. Yeah. I don't want to get too depressing in this podcast. I'm trying to keep it upbeat, but it's depressing.
Yay.
So basically, when we're talking about the Green New Deal, I want you to remember that it is a policyless, draftless, zero legislation, not a bill. It's a concept for a committee that was going to do all of those things, but that never happened. So when people say they support the Green New Deal, they're saying, I support a committee that's going to eventually do all of these things.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Remember those people.
Remember this. It's key. I promise. So, getting back into our original topic, which is the presidential debates, I finally want to go over some policy. And
Yay.
that would not, my job's done. I did the Green New Deal. Now we're going to go to the policy girl over here.
Oh, shit.
There you go. It's all you, baby. Shit, she's got her notes out.
Well, okay. So.
How do we want to go through all the politicians? Are we hitting everybody?
No.
No.
So
25 is too fucking many.
Yes, and a lot of them are pretty small, and I really don't know too much about them because they haven't really been in the debates, or at least the most recent one. So I'm basing this more off of the most recent debate, which had 20 candidates. I forgot to. Sorry.
We got
Oops.
the major ones.
They're pretty low on the totem pole. I kind of just wanted to give an idea of where everybody stands, kind of give some numbers on the presidential candidates and the Democratic Party, and then we can go from there. So,
You want to start with the most popular people? How do you want to go through it?
well, I kind of counted out what their policy platforms entail.
All right, hit me.
So, let's see here.
Who we got first?
So, let's see here. 12 of these 18/20 have some, at least on their website, they have some environmental actions that they want to implement, but they really don't have a heavily developed plan on how they're going to go about those. They're just like, oh, we're going to
Goals instead of policy.
there's some goals, and then like, oh, we're going to implement like a carbon tax, or we're going to tackle these big oil industries so that they can't,
Gotcha.
lobby heavily in our government, right?
Good
So
luck.
so that's 12 of the candidates. They do talk about environmental reform and their policies or their issues, but they really haven't done too much in that. And then, let's see here, 3 of them out of these 18 do not talk about environmental issues on their website. Doesn't mean that they don't support environmental reform. It's not one of their topics for their presidential platform.
Who are those 3?
Let's see here. I think I counted Bernie Sanders as one.
Oh, don't even get me started with Bernie Sanders.
Sadly, Tulsi Gabbard. I guess I did count Bernie Sanders. So it's Tulsi Gabbard. She doesn't have anything on her website. Bill de Blasio, he has nothing. And Julian Castro,
One of the 2.
the guy who kept speaking Spanish.
There's a couple. I was actually surprised. That was one. So the 2 surprising things from the debates. I've never seen climate change so heavily talked about, and I've never seen so many people speak Spanish.
Yes.
I actually felt like I was missing something. I'm like, wait, I need subtitles. Like, I don't know what the fuck's going on right now. Like, I feel like a secret,
Are they conspiring against
secret
us?
message was sent out. I mean, like, shit. But anyways, continue.
And then there are a few of them that have created climate plans. I can list those. Let's see here. We got Elizabeth Warren. She has a green manufacturing plan. She also has something for the military. Green.
Clean up their emissions.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Beto O'Rourke has a climate plan. Let's see here. obviously Jay Inslee has a climate plan. He has 4, 5, 10. Who really knows?
The dude's on a roll.
Let's see here. And then John Delaney has a climate plan, technically. Let's see here.
Yeah, some of these people's plans need like, air quotations.
Yeah. Joe Biden has a climate plan, and
What did he call it?
He was so full of himself, he called it the Biden plan.
People thought it wasn't his.
And then Michael Bennett, he has America's climate change plan.
All Joe Biden did is he just took Obama's climate plan and he just like took it and just crossed out Obama and just wrote Biden.
Yeah, probably. And then let's see here, especially since we were just talking about the Green New Deal concept, 6 of those candidates of the 18 that I have here mostly support the Green New Deal concept as a climate platform, but I don't think they really have too much other legislation or policy plans in
All
place.
right. Well, let's start with the front runner, self-centered man himself. Let's go with the Biden plan. Let's get into the meat of that. What has Joe Biden got for policy?
Nothing. No, just kidding. So he also supports the Green New Deal, which is good, I guess. And then
I think everybody, if you support any type of like policy reform, you support the Green New Deal concept. I mean, it's a concept that it covers everything. I mean, it's if you said, well, I don't support getting rid of social and economic inequalities, or I don't support stopping climate change, or I don't, if you don't support all of these things, you're part of the Trump administration. So it's every Democrat and every rational person supports the Green New Deal concept. I mean, it's a dream. So saying you support the Green New Deal is like, I support the idea that murder and rape shouldn't happen anymore. It's like, okay, well, who the fuck doesn't support that? So it's a little hard to quantify because like unless there's, I kind of want to get into policy that backs up these ideas. So what do we actually have with his Biden climate plan?
So his goals, I think, kind of line up with the Green New Deal and I think the Paris Agreement, which is 100% clean energy and net zero emissions by 2050, which I think is pretty much the basis for everybody's.
At the latest, 2050.
Yeah.
That's actually what Jay Inslee attacked him on during the second debate.
Yeah.
Was because he was saying 2050 was not soon enough. And you have Inslee's is at 2030 or 2035. I get a lot of these numbers mixed up. There's too many.
Yeah, I
dates.
think most of it's 2030. Some of his plans kind of goals range from 2030 to like 2045.
Right, depending on what it is. Because
Yeah.
transportation they're doing later.
Yeah, because
Gotcha.
that would be incredibly difficult.
Oh, it'd fuck us.
So yeah, that's kind of 2050. That's a pretty common goal, I would say. And he had a lot of stuff listed, which I think is good. Like he went pretty in depth with like things that he want to focus on and create legislation for. A lot of it is investments. So
that's everything.
Invest heavily in the green.
It's a stimulus package. Everything is.
Yeah.
You have to invest in the infrastructure. You have to invest in the R&D. That's every climate plan requires heavy investment.
Yeah. So I would say that's kind of the big focus for his plan is just invest all the money.
All of it.
And then something he also in his plan is to rejoin the Paris agreements, and then he also wants to promote and work with other countries and encouraging environmental reform and
so common sense stuff.
Yeah, so it was like mainly investments and then working globally to meet these goals and actually make them happen faster.
So how comfortable did you feel with his actual policy?
Um, I think it's pretty decent. Like, I think it handled quite a decent amount of environmental aspects. I'm like, obviously we need to invest money, but I don't think it's not something we should heavily rely on. I think there's other things that need to be implemented other than just investing money.
Oh, of course.
So that's kind of my issue with it.
But all policy takes money, especially you talk anything from the Green New Deal to moving to clean energy. I mean, it's going to take a massive amount of investment. That was actually one thing I was surprised about the Green New Deal that I didn't see mentioned really in other climate policies is they wanted to make a green bank where basically they would make a federal bank that would be responsible with for investments into all of these things because they would be redirecting and investing so much money. It's a stimulus package, right? So you're pumping money into areas that you want to see grow. You want to, also get investment, from private parties and stuff like that. So they were actually including a federal bank in the Green New Deal, which I actually liked. I thought it was smart in this concept idea. I thought that was a good goal to put in there because that would really help them, pump money and stimulate the areas that they wanted to go to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I can see why, and most of the plans we're going to talk about are heavily involved in the stimulus packages and investing money. Who is the next best? Well, not best. That wasn't best. He's the front runner. So who do we want to? Do we want to go through popularity, or how do you have your list done?
I kind of just looked up.
Winged it.
Yeah.
All right. Who's next? Surprise me. You want a drum roll?
We'll go to Michael Bennet. He was the first person I looked into, and he has America's climate change plan. I can't remember where he's from.
Michael Bennet?
Yeah.
I'll look it up. Tell me about his plan.
Anyway, so the goal for that one is 100% clean and net zero emissions by 2050. Once again, pretty common. Interesting thing about him, I think he was kind of a lot more conservative with his plan, and where it's not like, basically one of his big things is a Climate X option, and that was pretty much allowing making energy companies provide an option for their customers to be able to do 100% clean energy, renewable energy for their energy source. So it's basically like making.
Sorry, you gotta take your hands off the table.
Try
not to interrupt you. You're on a roll. And while I've already interrupted you, Michael Bennet he's from Colorado. He's the dude with that super tiny mouth that we were laughing at, who looked just like the kid from Preacher, with a little tiny mouth after he had shot himself. He's just. It looks like, I swear, if that dude smiled, like if he got like a super happy and laughed, like he would die. Like send him to a comedy club. His mouth would just tear and he would look like the Joker because he's got the little mouth and he talks like this and everything he does and all the climate change, and it's like, dude, he can't, like, the dude does not have a normal sized mouth. I think his wife has to cut up all of his food like he's a 3-year-old, like into tiny little pieces so he doesn't choke on it, just so he can fit it into a little hole. Like, sorry, I could not stop laughing at that dude.
So he doesn't eat corn?
No, he can't.
Yeah, so it's pretty much like having SRP say there's an option that the customers can choose that it's all renewable energy. And it's
they do that already.
Well, SRP does.
A lot of electricity companies. So if people are listening, SRP is the major electricity manufacturer in our area. Utilities.
Yes, sorry.
It's a Salt River project. They are. I thought it was pretty cool. We actually signed up for that, where SRP gives you options where you can choose how much of your electricity comes from a renewable source. For us, it was like $5 more a month to switch to a 100% renewable green energy program. So something like that. But I know a lot of utilities, if they have the option, they're already suggesting it to people because that allows them to invest more money into those types of projects.
Yeah. So he was kind of going for more of the free market. I would say kind of role is like, we're not going to make you move to this, but we're going to make sure it's an option.
Yeah, because the free market's worked out so well.
We're not going to get political, remember, Kale?
Jesus, damn it.
And then...
You don't want to hear like a 3-hour free market rant?
No.
Okay.
I don't think anybody does.
Next podcast.
And then he also had in his plan a 2030 climate challenge, which was focused on the states, and which every state had by 2030 had to come up with their own plan and goals to
Jesus, so this asshole literally just partitioned everything out to other people. My climate plan is that everybody else needs to come up with their own ideas to solve climate problems. Thanks.
Honestly,
so helpful.
A lot of the states are already, or at least a lot of the cities are already working on that. So.
Right.
And then he's also one of the proponents for a climate bank, so for the investments.
Huh. Okay. I like the climate bank idea. Other than that, he has a policy that seems to just shift the responsibility off to everybody else.
Yep.
I mean, the guy that has to cut all his food up into tiny little portions, surprisingly, is partitioning out his entire climate policy. Okay, good to know. Who's next?
We can talk about Pete Buttigieg.
Oh yeah, the Buttigieg. I was trying to say his name. This is how I remember all the candidates because I can name like I think all 18 out of the 20 that we did. Probably everybody who was at the debates, but it's this dude's name. I'm like, what is he trying to say? And if you streamed it like us, there was some audio lag coming through on everything, and so when they kept saying his name, it was like Buttigieg. And I'm like, is he Buttigieg? Like, what the fuck is this dude saying? I'm like, great. It's so we're like, it's Pete Buttigieg. Oh, he's back again. So
that's such a great presidential name.
I know.
President Buttigieg.
I mean, who could say that? I mean, shit, you thought Stormy Daniels came after Trump. I mean, you get President Buttigieg. I mean, she's coming after him hard.
Anyways. So
she's like, I know that guy.
Right. So he promotes the Green New Deal. He supports it. He doesn't have a specific climate plan.
Seriously?
Mm-hmm.
But okay, this was the dude who, in his opening and closing statement, went the hardest on climate change. So you're telling me this guy who told us, and he got the years wrong. He was trying to say by 2030. He said in 12 years. I'm like, dude, it's like 10 and a half at best. Like, I don't know. Like, I think he read,
something from 2008.
Yeah, the Paris, reports. And so he got this 12-year number in his head. Because obviously he doesn't have a policy, like you're saying. So it makes sense that he would say 12 years, not realize that, your math's wrong.
He does talk about environmental reform in his platform. He just doesn't have a plan.
Okay.
So he may have environmental reform as part of his issues or his platform, but it's not like.
So that's like me when I talk about how I'm going to be a millionaire, but I have no plan whatsoever to actually get there.
Yes. And so a lot of his environmental.
So we have the same life goals.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
Is the investment. It's a pretty big. If anybody, I think a lot of people, if they have any environmental reform or legislation proposals, it's a lot of investment.
It has to be.
Yeah, and then he also wants to rejoin the Paris agreements, and he's also promoting a carbon tax.
Okay.
So, Although I will mention Michael Bennett didn't say anything about the Paris agreements or the Green New Deal.
Huh.
I don't know if he.
Is dumb or original?
Let's see here.
Who do we got next?
I'll just kind of go through my list.
Go for it.
We got John Delaney. He has a climate plan. I think it's literally called the climate plan. And his is pretty simple, I would say. It's rejoining the Paris agreements. He also has a carbon fee and dividend proposal. So,
Okay. Carbon tax.
yeah. And then his is the only one that mentions a negative emissions technology, which is technology that is removing carbon from the atmosphere, the CO2.
Out of curiosity, do you want to describe carbon taxes?
Ooh, I don't.
We keep saying carbon tax.
Yeah.
We went into in depth on everything else.
I think it's. I could be wrong, because I forgot to kind of look this up, but I think it's pretty much taxing the amount of a certain amount of CO2 that is being produced by a company or a person.
Man, for someone who did not inspire confidence whatsoever, you actually got it right. Yeah, it's pretty. It's self-explanatory. I think that's why we didn't really get into it. They're literally taxing carbon. Like, so if you produce so much carbon, they put a price on, however much carbon per square or whatever, however they measure it. And then they basically, you get taxed for that much, and then that money gets funneled into essentially something like these green banks, where it promotes investment into moving away from carbon, essentially.
Yeah. Basically, it's too expensive to produce it or have it as a byproduct, and so
It creates incentives, because not only does it help fund climate, climate stimulus packages, it actually funds it, because people always ask where is this money going to come from. So not only does it help fund investment,
yeah.
but it also, the main thing that people say is that because dirty energy is so cheap, that's always the thing, is that if it's not cheaper than coal, then it's not going to get built. And so by placing a carbon tax on things, it raises the price of essentially burning coal for energy. So that way the other energies can compete, because when they first start, they're going to be more expensive, because it's a lot of investment, a lot of R&D. The technology is not there yet. Like, a lot of the things that we need to save this environment aren't invented yet. They don't exist.
Yeah.
So you gotta spend a lot of money into it, and there's not a lot of mass manufacturing and all these things just yet. So essentially, you have to raise the cost of coal, so it looks more cost beneficial to go to something renewable.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So yeah, that was kind of basically his plan that he had outlined. It's cool that he did try and create a plan. And then one person I did want to mention was John Hickenlooper.
Hickenlooper. Damn, dude, these presidents, man.
I know, right?
President Hickenlooper.
He's, I think, the only Democratic candidate that does not like the Green New Deal.
Yeah. Jesus, does he support murder and rape?
Yeah, I guess so.
Does he say why?
I don't actually know. It might be because of the social issues, because he does, in his platform, talk about environmental reform, like joining the Paris agreements.
Okay. See, that makes more sense.
Promoting green jobs and also the investments. I think he's just
against the social stuff.
Probably.
Okay. That's a lot of people. A lot of the criticism of the Green New Deal is not for the environmental aspects. Most people can, if you believe climate change is real, then you pretty much support stopping it. Among people that don't believe, among anyone other than climate change deniers and Trump supporters, you pretty much support environmental reform. A lot of the stuff that people disagree with, because like I said, the Green New Deal concept is not, it's it would be inaccurate to represent it as a climate reform because it covers a whole fuckload of other issues. So a lot of the stuff that people disagree with is some of the economic impacts. Labor is a big one because it wants to train people, get them out of these,
Dirty.
not just dirty jobs, like because you obviously still have a bunch of like coal miners that are going to need new jobs, but at the same time, they say anybody who wants a job has the right to a job. So they'll get you employed if you are wanting to be employed and you're not, which is a great idea. I mean, like I said, perfect world scenario. Everybody has a job. So they'll train people. There's some debate on how you do that. I know it took a lot of shit in the news. One of their staffers leaked a draft document where they basically said everybody will get a job even if they don't want one. I think it was a really shitty way of trying to lead into universal basic income. And it was a draft, and basically one of the staffers got pissed and leaked it, and so fucking Republicans had a heyday. Fucking Democrats, they're gonna give money to people who don't even want to work, but
We already do that.
it wasn't in the it was never in a bill that was supported, but yeah. So people take issue with a lot of the social aspects of the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
So what else did he have? This Hickenlooper. I can't see that as president. That sounds like that
He's a
goofy private that dies first in the war movies. That the general always he's always dropping shit, and the general's yelling at him, to like hustle, and he's just like bumping into walls, and has his gun on backwards. He says, Private Hickenlooper reporting for duty, sir.
I think he also is the one that looks weird too.
Which one? Well, John Delaney looked like a fish.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot of weird looking dudes. Really weird looking dudes.
Oh dear. Oh no, he was just the really old one.
The really old guy?
Yeah. And
That's an old name.
sorry, not Bernie Sanders, but the other old guy.
Yeah, dude, there's some old people. Biden and Bernie, and it's like, Jesus Christ.
Every time Biden looked down at his paper, I could just see the spotting on the top of his head.
Oh, yeah, his liver spots.
And I'm just like, oh my God, they forgot to put makeup on that.
Dude, I wonder if Hickenlooper and Bernie and Biden all share the same nursing home. Like, they're just going out to Denny's with their AARP cards. Like, it's just, these dudes are fucking ancient.
Yep.
It's like, where did you dig these fuckers up? Like, God damn it, dude. Like, I was expecting one of these people to have a stroke, which I promised I wasn't going to talk about anything other from the debates other than the environmental stuff. But at the very end, when Biden was like, so remember, go to Joe 30330.
Like he had the hardest time remembering it. He was just like,
I thought he was having a stroke.
Well, he kept messing up his words a lot too during when he was talking. I
thought he was stroking out.
Is this dude okay? Like, are there paramedics on the scene?
He like reached out to Cory Booker for support. He said, "Oh, my heart's going, man. Shouldn't have taken that Viagra last night."
Back to what we were talking about.
You have to just talk shit through the debates. That's the only way you can get through it. You just make fun of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the Hickenlooper.
I hope he comes out with a climate plan and you don't even say plan or anything after it. We literally just call it the Hickenlooper. That's all I want. I just want to call it the Hickenlooper. It's going to save the world. I would name everything Hickenlooper. Like, he would have a giant carbon capturing device that would just be this massive phallic object, and he would just say, I name it the Hickenlooper.
I mean, that'd be kind of awesome. But, yeah, he doesn't really have too much else in his platform. It's rejoining Paris, creating green jobs, investing in green infrastructure. It's the basics.
Okay. Who else we got?
I'm saving Jay Inslee for last.
Oh, yeah? Everyone's like, God damn it. He's going to look over him.
We'll go to Beto O'Rourke.
Beto? Is it Beto or Beto?
I don't know.
I think it's Beto. Sorry, continue.
I have no idea. He
the
also
Texan.
has a climate plan. His is kind of interesting because his is unique as well, where uh, he does the investment of green infrastructure and rejoining Paris agreements, but he also wants to have it where the costs of things reflect the full costs of the climate and the environmental degradation. So, um, which is
Inslee was talking about that.
yeah, which is incredibly hard to calculate. I feel like because how can you really calculate the cost of cutting down a forest and
It's
stuff
hard. So if I recall, that's called the social cost of carbon. So
like that? Yeah,
it's different than a carbon tax. It's I I have read about that vaguely, but it's the social cost of carbon, where basically they're gonna try and put a number somehow. Who the fuck knows? Come up with some type of algorithm to put a price on the effects that products are gonna have on everything.
on the climate,
And
on the environment.
right, the big one they put on is carbon. So the reason why they call it the social cost of carbon is because they're trying to look at, well, what is carbon's not, what is carbon actually influencing? What's it affecting? So instead of just doing a carbon tax, they're like, well, you can't just tax just carbon, because carbon's affecting all these other things. So it's affecting our health, it's affecting our societies, it's affecting the social aspects, a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
So it's similar to that. So because they're not just looking at just carbon, they're looking at every type of product.
I think
But
so.
it's the social cost of blah blah blah. But it's the environmental cost. I've heard some people doing it, but like you said, the hard part that I hear from everybody is there's no way to. How do you figure out how much cost that actually is to come up with an accurate price?
I know people have tried to calculate these costs, but I think a lot of people are also worried about, well, if you start putting this price tag on the environment, it's just going to make people look at it as a commodity and not really
Right.
as this special place, and that's more of a spiritual or something like that. So that's also one of the worries.
I want to take a detour while we're on this topic.
Uh-oh.
Detour.
Down the rabbit hole.
Essentially, yeah. That's what you should call this. Kale gets way off path. It's just squirrel. It's one thing that I thought was interesting, because a lot of things you talk about is, okay, well, obviously we need electric cars, we need renewable energy, we need to, quit burning shit. Airplanes need to be, eco-friendly. All these things are kind of obvious. Invest in green stuff, blah 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 blah. You hear a lot of this rhetoric a lot, but there's always interesting little social things, like little things that just change how you see something. Like, it wasn't some big investment stimulus package, but there's always little tweaks that I like. And one thing that I came across when I was looking into the social cost carbon and all these things that you're talking about is, instead of pricing carbon, or not instead of, but instead of focusing so much on the cost of how much cutting down a forest and all those things like his plan is talking about, since it's so hard to come up with all those prices and all the cons to it. One thing that I heard is have all products that you buy at the store somewhere on the product, kind of like the nutrition label or whatever, because we have lots of things that have to be presented on a product in order to sell it, right? That's a very easy thing for the government to regulate, where basically they would put on every single product how much carbon was made to make this product. So essentially every single product you bought would have a carbon ranking, very similar to the energy ratings that have to be on all electronics.
Yeah.
So that way, if you get an Energy Star certified electronic, right, so you can kind of go and look at the electronics, well, how much consumption is this going to make, right? So very similar to that, but on all products. So you would go to buy a box of cereal, and it would say, whatever their measurement is, it would say, 23 pounds of carbon was made to create this box of cereal. So that is easier to measure how much carbon had to go into making the cardboard, the plastic around it, the cereal, so you had to go into, because agriculture is one of the biggest producers of carbon. So, in order to grow the corn, right, that made this cereal, right, cornflakes or whatever,
Lucky Charms.
yeah, whatever went into this cereal, you could measure the carbon. So that way, once again, we're getting into free market, where basically people who were more environmentally inclined could then decide on what products they wanted to buy and support. So now it gives manufacturers an incentive, because it's like, okay, well, if all these other cereals are at 12, let's say pounds. I don't know what the measurement for carbon would be.
Cubic feet,
Whatever. 12 carbon, right?
Molecules.
All these other cereals were 12, and one cereal was 30, and that lost them sales. They're gonna look at it and go, well, how can we get this down? So it kind of makes products competitive in an environmental way that they've never been competitive. But like, products have never had to compete for how environmental they were, and you always see on products all of these things that they can say that does not have to be qualified by any type of governing body or agency, where it says, these words like all natural.
Yeah.
The fuck's all natural? Whatever they want, right? It's gasoline. It's all natural, or free range, or what else? Clean, green. Like, these are words that you can literally slap on anything. So you can call this a green toothbrush, right?
Yeah.
It could be a regular old fucking toothbrush. Like, there is no...
And I painted it green.
Right. There's no regulatory system in place whatsoever. So all these products are saying all natural and green and environmentally friendly, and they're advertising the shit out of all these things.
Yeah.
And so that's what they found, is that there's actually a huge influence of the consumer market of people wanting to buy green, environmentally friendly products. It's huge. So I actually thought that was one of the... It's so easy. There's no investment. There's nothing. Like, that would be really, really basic legislation, and it's very capitalist, free market. Like, it's perfect. Like, I don't think a lot of people would really hate on it. It's like, you're not saying the product's not allowed to be there.
Yeah.
You're just saying this is the environmental impact of this product, and it's listed. It has to be listed on every single, box of cereal on the front, every single product on the front of its packaging. It has to say this is the environmental impact of this product. And I thought that was ingenious. Like, I wanted to get more into that when we did our recycling podcast.
Yeah.
But that I absolutely loved that, because that's something that you can actually look at the cost of something and let the consumer decide, and then you actually have a governing body that regulates, what's written on the packaging, and then the consumer can look at this and go, oh, well, this one says green and this one says nothing, but hey, look, this one, the carbon's completely different.
Yeah.
So that would actually help people
Make
alter
their choices.
Well, not just make their choices, but it would alter how these companies conducted business.
Yeah.
It would entirely change it, and you didn't even really do anything to the company.
Right.
So I would have loved to have seen that in a president's climate plan, because I thought that was absolutely ingenious. So sorry, I'm back on the path now. We're done. That was my sidestep.
Oh my. Well, okay. So then another thing I wanted to mention for Beto O'Rourke. Sorry. Is he's also one of the few that mentions climate resilience and disaster response.
Ooh.
Because, as we all know, there's still a bunch of hurricanes occurring, and the responses to those aren't always the best, and so they're just going to still get worse.
I don't know. I think Katrina would disagree with you.
Yeah. And, the ocean
California's
rising.
like, what fire?
So I thought that was kind of interesting. He also has, legislation plans for the responses to
Yeah,
that.
his were actually pretty comprehensive. I was surprised.
And I think he was also one of the few in the debates that mentioned climate change as an
Uh-huh.
issue. He's a younger guy.
Yeah, he did his homework. He's a Texan.
Oh, which something I wanted to mention is since he is from Texas, some of his policies that he's voted on have kind of been in favor of oil industries.
You kind of have to in Texas.
Yeah, so I think that's something to be aware of is that he may have some,
Ties to oil.
yeah,
Yeah.
which
That-
sucks.
I know we just got back on this path, but you're saying things that
Or
are
triggering Kale.
Yeah, I'm triggered. So it's one thing that they wanted to do with the Green New Deal committee, right? So this committee, and this is something that they wanted to implement when Nancy Pelosi did not give them their committee, and she created this other new committee. Is they AOC and a couple other people were really pushing that anybody who was on this committee could not have taken major campaign donations from Dirty Energy. So if you had ever taken money from one of these, horrible Dirty Energy businesses, so if Exxon is, bankrolling your campaign,
Yeah.
okay, you can't be on this fucking committee.
Which makes sense.
Right, it makes perfect sense. The problem is what they looked at it is if you implemented that, you basically would eliminate like every major politician on every side of the aisle. So basically Democrat, Republican, all of them. Basically any of the older politicians, they couldn't sit on the committee, and it would be all new young people who hadn't been there long enough to take money, from a dirty super PAC.
I think that's fine.
Right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually kind of like that idea as
A lot of people did. They didn't do it though.
Ugh.
They're like, "Oh, fuck you."
um
It just shows how bad dirty money is.
yeah, and so I'll just continue on.
Sorry, back to Beto.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's about it
Oh,
for
is it? He's done. All
O'Rourke.
right. Who's next? What do we got?
I think we should mention Bernie Sanders
Ah,
because
Jesus.
he's pretty popular
Oh.
with the
all
young
right.
folk, even though he's like the oldest candidate.
Jesus, yeah, right.
He's shaking his cane.
I know. He just yells at people. It's funny. He just yells everywhere he goes.
Let's see here.
lawn.
So the big issue with him.
Do you sorry to interrupt. Do you want us to pull up our Green New Deal right, what is it? What do you want to call it? A survey sheet? No, it's
Rubric.
It's a scorecard
Yeah.
rubric. Do we want to pull that up and show it to people?
Not yet.
Not yet. All right.
Sorry, you guys. You're gonna have to wait.
I was going to save Bernie for last because of that.
Oh, okay. Well, I can wait on Bernie.
All right.
Sorry, we're skipping Bernie for a second.
I mean, if you want to touch base on what he has real quick.
Well, sure. So Bernie Sanders, he does support the Green New Deal, but on his website, on his platform, he really doesn't have anything provided, like information-wise. He just kind of has like a little paragraph saying climate change is real and it's an issue, and that's about it. So he
Okay.
doesn't have a plan.
All right. Bernie's done. Moving on.
About-
about-
then there's
What about the little old lady, Elizabeth Warren?
Elizabeth Warren.
Where
She
she's
was
at?
getting so angry during those
I
debates.
know.
It was
She's
adorable.
feisty. Yeah, Bernie's like a weird senile dementia, like shaking his, stick at the neighborhood cats outside of the nursing home crazy. And she's like this adorable little grandmother who like had, maybe a glass of wine at Christmas dinner and someone said something insulting and she's just getting all feisty over it, and you watch your mouth. Like she was
Young
just
man.
she's like an adorable feisty instead of like a senile feisty.
Yeah.
What she got?
So she has two mostly focused on environmental, and she had the green manufacturing plan, which I instantly thought like manufacturing of items, but it's really not too much related to that as more of the manufacturing of energy.
Okay.
So that's kind of her focus. I would say is pretty basic.
Green energy,
Yeah.
renewables.
And then she also has a platform for making the military more green, reducing its emissions.
Which is bad. They're one of our biggest emissions polluters, especially in transportation.
Yeah. So, which I think is important. I don't think a lot of
They
the
just
other,
waste gas.
yeah.
They guzzle it, man.
And then so that was pretty much it for her. Then we have Andrew Yang. He was kind of
The Yang Gang.
yeah, he's kind of depressing on the debates. He's like,
He was.
you guys were screwed. Why are we even talking about this?
Yeah, he literally said is like, we're 10 years too late, and so literally just take this $1,000 a month I'm gonna give you and go build a house up on a hill. Because there's no, like, it's gonna flood. Like, dude, just go buy a bunker with this $1,000 a month I'm gonna give you and live underground.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he literally said, I don't know why we're talking about this. We're 10 years too late. Take my money and, go build a house up on a hill. Like, that was literally his climate argument in the debate, which I thought was quite fucked up. And I just,
Wow,
all right.
pessimist over here.
Is his climate policy any better? Does he have anything?
Not too much. He does have some environmental goals or policies that he has. He has some pretty specific ones. Nothing too concrete though. Well, I guess that's counterintuitive. But he has a lot of things that he wants to focus on, but they're not super specific. There you go. He does promote the carbon tax.
Okay.
And then he's one of the few where he's like, geoengineering technology is the way to go. So
what is geoengineering? Oh, where they're gonna alter
the atmosphere.
Oh, fuck that. No, fuck him. Fuck Yang. Jesus Christ. That's one thing that I do not in any way, shape, or form agree with.
Yeah.
At all. Fuck you. Where they want to shoot the shit into the atmosphere to reflect everything. No, fuck you. No, go away. I don't want to get into that on this. We can rant about that later.
Yeah.
But no, fuck that policy.
It's pretty much changing the climate so that
artificially.
Yeah.
By doing all sorts of crazy science shit. Instead of just getting off fossil fuels.
Yeah, so it doesn't really reduce the emissions of CO2. It just reduces the effects.
Damn it.
So.
See, I liked him and his, I like the idea of universal basic income. I think it's a good idea, but nope, fuck him.
Yeah.
Damn, dude. I liked him on Joe Rogan, too. He had him on his podcast, and I thought the guy did really well. He was more concise. Like, I thought he did well, but on his strictly environmental look, fuck that guy.
Yeah. Everybody else, one guy I think I'll mention is Steve Bullock a little bit. He does have some environmental policy plans, but it's mostly on government entities. So it's not really public or private companies. It's state lands, reducing the emissions of state lands, government entities, buildings, stuff like that.
Okay.
So,
that's a start. I mean, it's a good concept, but that can't be your entire concept.
Yeah. Everybody else is either like the Green New Deal, Paris Agreement, investing in infrastructure. It's pretty basic stuff like that.
See, that bothers me because those are all things that you can easily say. Like,
Yeah.
it's really easy to say, I support the Green New Deal concept. Okay, cool. Everybody should.
Yeah.
It's pretty basic. Or I support a carbon tax. Okay, so you're putting a tax on carbon. Fine. Or, well, I support joining the Paris Agreement. Okay, that fine.
Doesn't mean you actually have to do anything.
Right. I don't like it when people don't have concrete policies or legislations where they're specific about these are the things that we need to do to fix this problem. Not only I don't want to hear a politician say, "Oh, I believe we need to get to 100% green renewable energy."
Great. How are we going to do that?
Right. Okay. How? Tell me. Like, what is your plan to actually fucking do that?
Yeah.
Like how do you plan on getting there? That's my biggest issue is all these empty promises, and there's, in my opinion, there's nothing more empty than this fucking rhetoric that's, well, I support the Green New Deal. I support joining the Paris Agreement. I support a carbon tax, and that's my climate platform. It's like, okay, so you literally have no policy, no fucking details, no legislation. You're literally supporting things that require you to do absolutely nothing to support it, but yet you get to come off and sound like, oh, well,
You're
I'm an
environmentalist.
environmentalist. I support combating climate change. I care. Like this
Climate change is really
this is a
important.
big issue for me. But yet, you couldn't sit down and actually look into the fucking details of how do we get there?
Yeah.
It's I don't know. That's the biggest problem I have when I hear a lot of these candidates.
Yeah.
So are we getting to our rock star?
Yeah,
Are we there?
I think that leads into our superhero
There we
of
go.
environmental reform.
Fucking shit. Dude who needs no introduction.
People need to know.
Yeah, they do. Sorry.
He is Jay Inslee, the governor from Washington, because Washington's amazing.
Right. Dude's a fucking environmental rock star.
Uh,
Watch out, Al Gore.
right.
Jay Inslee's coming for you.
Yeah, he's pretty cool because
He needs like a good introduction.
his entire platform is on climate change and
Everything.
fighting climate change. Like,
He's Al Gore without the cape.
well, he should have a cape.
He needs a cape. This motherfucker came in riding Man Bear Pig. Man Bear Pig is fucking Jay Inslee's bitch.
Pretty much. Who knows what they have out in Washington?
No, dude.
Yeah, and so what's really cool about him and kind of whatever is contrary to like what everybody else is doing is he has not just one, not just two, I think he has 4 main climate plans and a few other smaller ones. And they're pretty detailed. We won't go.
They're in depth. Like how everybody else came to the table with empty goals. This dude actually has policy. This dude actually has plans and things that he's actually implemented in Washington. So these aren't just ideas that he thinks are going to work. These are things that are currently working right now in Washington that he's implemented. So that he's been doing this like the past 8 years. He's been implementing actual climate change policy and reform. So this is like, if you want to talk climate change, this is the only dude in the entire presidential Democratic Party right now that has, in my opinion, any substance whatsoever to him combating climate change. Everybody else is just empty promises.
Yeah.
And this dude actually has policy reform. He has details. He has legislation that you can actually go in and look at and judge.
Yeah, and he has the history. He has all the knowledge, and he's been implementing this in Washington. It's not like he's just talking about it. He's actually done this.
Right. Dude's an environmental badass.
Yeah. So I think he's pretty cool, but not everybody else thinks so.
Dude, as we record this right now, he is polling at 0.6%, so he's not there's no way he can make it into the third debate.
Which is sad.
Oh, it's fucked. It is absolutely fucked. When MSNBC and CNN do their climate talk shows in September, CNN is saying that they're going to require the same threshold to be on their talk show. So he's not going to make the 2% at polling and the 130,000 donors.
Yeah.
He's not going to get that, which sucks. So he probably won't be at the CNN one anyway. So, fuck CNN.
Pretty much.
Can we say that? I don't know.
Well, weren't they the host for the last
They
debate?
were.
And they sucked at it.
They did. They did really bad. I liked the first debate just because you could watch it on YouTube and it was easy.
It was so easy.
CNN, their stream was terrible. Oh
You had
my
to,
God, did their stream suck.
Either be subscribed to them, and supposedly you could watch it on their website, but
so laggy.
they did commercials, and
It would kick you out of the stream every time
Yeah,
you
and
watched
so
it. Yep.
you'd miss like 5-10 minutes because it was just trying to load and
Yep.
get connected back to whatever.
their servers. It was
Yeah.
fucked. It was awful.
It was annoying.
So, but MSNBC, they're going to allow everybody, Republican, Democrat, everybody's invited.
Trump going
Yeah,
to
I hope Trump does. They said they were going to give everybody an hour. So, and it's not a debate. So everyone gets an hour to sit down and talk about their platform. So I love it because it actually allows you to get in depth. It's not these little 60-second snippets and where you have to fight with other candidates just so you get news coverage for the rest of the week. It's you can actually get into the fucking heart and guts of your policy reform. And so I want that to clearly show the difference between Inslee and everybody else on this field, because you're going to have all these other people come up and go, okay, well, we got an hour. Give us an in-depth look at your climate change policy. And they're going to be like, well, I support the Green New Deal, and I support, joining the Paris Accord, and I think we need to put a tax on, the carbon industry, and, I think we need to take giving all these, all this money to, all the dirty energy. We need to remove their funding and all their subsidies, and that's what I believe we need to do to fight climate change. And then they're going to be like, okay, we got 58 minutes. What else you got? Like, there's fucking nothing to their policy reform. I think Inslee is going to be the only one where he could go in there and just like, how much time do you got? Like, which policy do you want me to focus on? Should I do like, I think the dude would just give like a TED talk for 3 hours on like, I need like an hour per policy. He'll just take everybody else's time and just do like a 6-hour seminar on policy reform for climate change.
Yeah.
And so I'm really sad that CNN is not going to do it. Like, a lot of this came out of the fact that the Sunrise Movement group,
Sunrise Movement.
They were the ones that were protesting the DNC, if you saw it in the news, to do climate debates. But the DNC said that they don't want to do debate specifically on
climate change.
But they've still been protesting it and everything. So
they've been pushing it pretty hard.
Right. So that's why CNN and MSNBC decided they were going to take it up. But they can't do a debate because the DNC, being the cocksuckers that they are, for whatever reason, I don't want to rant about it, but for whatever reason, the Democratic National Convention, DNC, the people in charge of the Democratic Party and the debates, they, for whatever reason, said you are not allowed to participate in any debate that is not sanctioned by the DNC. Even though the DNC is saying we will refuse to do a climate change debate, they said anybody who goes and does a climate change debate will not be allowed back to do a debate on their platform. So if Jay Inslee, if you ever hear this, go do a debate, because they're not inviting you back to the third and the fourth. So you're already out. So just literally go debate everybody and fuck shit up and to just destroy everyone at every debate. Just start hosting debates. Go to every college and just do it.
All right.
But CNN, whatever, they should lower their threshold. And I mean, come on, they were doing this because Jay Inslee wasn't really getting to talk climate change. And, anybody who's environmental party, you're pulling for Inslee. I mean, Sunrise Movement, everybody. He's the obvious choice for anybody who's looking at the Democratic Party right now for climate change.
Yeah.
All 0.6% of us apparently polling. I don't know who the fuck does these polls. They suck. But, he'll at least get to go to the MSNBC, and hopefully he just destroys everybody there, and we get to see him in the fourth debate, which will be in October. So hopefully he kills that. And like I said, there's also going to be the Paris, the UN is going to come here and talk about their climate convention. Maybe he'll get to go to the climate convention.
That'd be cool.
I mean, it's going to be here. He's got nothing else to do now in September. So, I mean, there's other things for him to do. I just really hope to see that polling get up, because 0.6% is fucking depressing.
Yeah.
So what else we got? Any further deep dives into his platform?
Well, I'll just kind of talk about the basics of what his plans are. So he has a 100% clean energy plan, which is pretty common. Like that's
a common sense thing.
And then he has an evergreen economy plan, which is kind of the investment aspect and greening the economy.
Okay.
And then he also wants to create a climate conservation corps.
Core. It was a
Which
corpse. That's something entirely different.
I never know because there's an
Right.
S on the end.
Right. As long as there's not an E after that S,
Right.
it's not a body.
So, and I think that's kind of like a global group on, it's almost like a nonprofit kind of trying to implement grassroots stuff. I think. He has a global climate mobilization plan, which is looking at the global impacts and working with other countries. And then freedom from fossil fuels plan, which I think explains itself.
Well, cars,
Yeah,
transportation,
transportation.
airplanes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he has a community climate justice, not really a plan, but a platform, and which
Some of the social aspects.
yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. So he's focusing on those. So I think that's pretty comprehensive. Like he touches base on everyone, and it's not all in just one plan. He has a detailed plan for every.
Right. And these are things that could actually be written into legislation.
Yeah.
Like these aren't just goals. He doesn't need no committee, right? This dude's like ready, like we have legislation. He's already done it in Washington. He just wants to do it countrywide. And
Nationally.
I mean this dude is, for most people, he's the only choice if you actually want environmental change. Who the fuck knows if we'll get it?
Right.
No, in this country. I don't want to get depressed, but whatever. So
Okay, well,
pitching back would be to the Green New Deal.
oh yeah, so I think now that we've gone through most of them, we can actually look at that rubric.
In depth.
Yeah,
All right.
because that kind of gives you an image of like, where everybody stands.
Visual representation. So I'll pull it up right now. So for everybody looking at this, oh, it's in the middle. There we are. So as you can see on the top here, the Green New Deal rubric. God, I don't know why I put an L in there.
Are
For
you
2020
stroking?
Yeah, probably. Oh shit, I'm Biden. For 2020 candidate climate plans. So essentially, this was made by a group called Data for Progress. Data for Progress, if you've been following the Green New Deal in the news, they were one of the very first, they're like a think tank. They were one of the very first groups that actually made some policy to try and accomplish some of the goals of the Green New Deal. So people have been trying to make policy. There have been a couple groups out there since the committee actually didn't get made. So a couple of the think tanks have been trying to come up with policy and legislation in lieu of this, committee never going through.
Mm-hmm.
So Data for Progress, they kind of did the initial blueprint for the Green New Deal policies and all of its goals and ideas. So what they did was they made this rubric, this scorecard, if you will, to kind of look at each candidate's public platform. So they went through and they looked at everybody's public platform and kind of ranked it how it does the Green New Deal. So one thing you'll notice when you're looking at this, the categories are listed over on the left. So the first one here is, the low carbon economy. It's not all climate change. Like I said, it's not just a climate change reform.
Yeah, this is based off of the Green New Deal
Correct.
concepts.
So the Green New Deal was supposed to give people a platform. It didn't give them a policy platform. So instead, this is kind of like, how do they match up for the goals of what this is? So you'll look at all the different categories that you have here and how everybody lined up. I know it's a little hard because it's long. If you guys just go to filesforprogress.org, you can actually look at this yourself, or you can just search Green New Deal scorecard Data for Progress and it'll pull up. So if you look at this here, fucking Inslee, man, this dude is all across the fucking board. So he's kind of there in the middle. I mean, just look for the only one who has full blue circles.
Yeah.
So to kind of explain their rubric,
How many did he get out of the?
he got 41 out of 48. I mean, the dude just fucking nailed it. So he so if you have the full circles, that means not only did they mention it in their plans.
Or their legislation.
Well, no,
policies.
plans.
Yeah.
So their platform. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry.
So not only did they mention it in their platform, but they actually have detailed plans on how to accomplish this goal. The half circle is that it was mentioned on their platform, but they don't give any details whatsoever on how they're going to accomplish this. And then the no circle is basically it wasn't even mentioned, wasn't touched on anything. So it's a really good rule of thumb. You can they put all the candidates up there and you can kind of look at what they have. Now, this is obviously based on what they have publicly. I think the only person who, since this has come out, has changed publicly from our research is Cory Booker. Has changed he's come out with public climate change plan and so forth. So you look at this and you can easily just see that Jay Inslee there in the middle. I mean, this dude is like every goddamn circle this motherfucker checked off. I mean, you look at how much of this is just not covered whatsoever. Like, there's a lot of open circles, and this motherfucker just went down the list. Like, his plans cover absolutely every aspect of the Green New Deal. So all these people that couldn't come up with policy for the Green New Deal, this motherfucker came up with. Like, I mean, he instead of just coming up with this concept idea, he actually came up with the policies and the legislation that could be passed to actually make something like this a reality.
It's interesting because they have the Steve Bullock guy, and I think I remember he had some talks about it, but like he doesn't even have half circles. Has nothing.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
It might not have been specific. Like I said, this is specific to the Green New Deal. Its goals. And you can read all the goals on there.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a lot. And it doesn't only the first part is, getting rid of carbon. So there's a lot of other stuff. There's social stuff, labor stuff, economic stuff, natural restoration, clean water, all that stuff. The main thing that bothers me, and we get back to fucking Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, for all of his talk, he has probably been the most notorious person to supporting Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her Green New Deal resolution to form this committee. I've actually been getting spammed on Facebook, so I don't know if everybody else has, but I actually don't follow any politicians on my phone, and my phone is not hooked up to my computer. So whatever I search for on my computer doesn't translate into the advertisements on my phone. So this is completely, unsolicited, but I am getting so many advertisements, paid sponsored, posts through Facebook that promote Bernie. He is advertising so fucking hard on everything, and it's
like specifically on climate.
Like, I mean, it's not just like support Bernie. No, it's help Bernie stop climate change, right? It's join Bernie and AOC for a Green New Deal. Climate change is real. Like, this is the candidate for climate change. I mean, he is advertising so fucking hard on social media and in paid content. And the problem that I have is that for all of his support of the Green New Deal, for all of this advertisement, and he is trying so hard to pitch himself as a climate change candidate, when you go back and you look at this page here, you look at the very, very end in the gray, this motherfucker does not have any mention of anything, of climate change whatsoever on his public platform. He has nothing. He has no climate platform whatsoever. For this dude that is supposedly really, really, really fucking pushing the Green New Deal with AOC on the the Green New Deal scorecard, this motherfucker has a 0. A goddamn 0. He supports the Green New Deal, but he literally has no platform whatsoever to do anything about the Green New Deal. He has no policy, no plans, no fucking platform. This dude literally has a 0 on the fucking Green New Deal scorecard. And so I'm just thinking, like, how can you promote something so fucking hard and say I'm a climate change candidate when you don't have a climate platform. He has nothing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people on here. I mean, you look at this and you have, what, Kamala Harris on here?
Kamala.
Yeah, I always get that wrong. Kamala Harris.
Amy
You got
Klobuchar.
Yeah, the Amy, and then same thing. Julian Castro doesn't have anything. Bill de Blasio, like all these people, and wasn't it Julian and Bill de Blasio and Kamala Harris and Bernie Sanders? They all support the Green New Deal publicly. All these,
probably,
and I remember it in the debates. They all supported the Green New Deal publicly.
Mm-hmm.
However, none of them have climate platform. And that's my problem. Like, that's one thing that I was trying to explain from the very beginning of why there is such a major misconception between the Green New Deal concept and the Green New Deal resolution that creates this committee. Because I love the concept of the Green New Deal in theory, right? I mean, like I said, who wouldn't? However, my biggest complaint is they wanted to create the Green New Deal committee, right? This is the resolution that AOC submitted, and this is what Bernie Sanders is also campaigning to get people to support. The problem is that they wanted to have this committee create draft policies that presidential candidates could then run on as part of their platform, right? But this never got done.
Mm-hmm.
There was no policies. There was no draft made, right? Because there's no fucking committee.
Yeah.
So now you have candidates that are supporting the Green New Deal idea, this concept of it, but they were relying on this committee to create all of their policy.
Yeah.
They were relying on this committee to do all of the thinking for them, and then they could go, "Oh, I support that. That right there. That's mine. I support that. We should do that."
I made that happen.
Yeah, that was me. No, you made a fucking committee and they did all the work. And guess what? They didn't even make the fucking committee. The committee did not work. So I think it's actually incredibly detrimental to the political process, or at least our perception of these debates, because when you only get these 60-second sound bites, right, from these people, and they're fighting all the time, and there's 10 people per night, right, and you're trying to get in all these climate questions within all the other healthcare and immigration and all these other questions. It's hard for them to really talk about these things. So all you hear is that, oh, well, he supports the Green New Deal, and in your head, everything you hear is from the media and everything is that, oh, well, the Green New Deal, it's this bill, it's this legislation, it's this policy, it exists. People aren't told that the Green New Deal is just this pipe dream. It's a concept, but has no meat on the bones whatsoever, no policy. And I think it does a huge disservice because it takes the conversation away from candidates like Inslee or even Beto O'Rourke, and people who actually have not just goals of their own, but they have policy. Yeah. They actually did their homework. They have legislation that they want to get pushed through, changes they want to make to actually, combat climate change or combat social, injustice or inequality or the labor or transportation or whatever aspect you want of the Green New Deal. Yeah. They actually have policy for it. But when you have people like, Bernie Sanders, if you just take it on the surface and you look at it and people just hear, oh, well, he supports the Green New Deal, and I've heard the Green New Deal does all these things, just like at the very beginning when you read off the Sierra Club's website. Yeah. Right? You think it's policy, and it's not. And I think that does a huge disservice, because if you really look into who has ideas to combat climate change, you'll kind of notice this huge disparity between every other candidate and Jay Inslee. Yeah. He's like, Inslee has actual policy. Mm-hmm. So does Beto O'Rourke. So does Joe Biden, grudgingly. But you have people that can just speak words, and say, oh, well, I support the Green New Deal, and they're confusing people into thinking that they're climate candidates when I want to make very clear, until this dude actually comes out with policy, until he actually sits the fuck down and looks at something other than Medicare for all, okay, because that's his all-encompassing thing. Like, I don't think he can handle anything else. Unless he sounds like a broken record. It's, oh, Medicare for all. Oh, Wall Street needs to go down. Oh, all this stuff. It's okay, great. He can't handle any other fucking policy.
Yeah.
And he just goes, oh, well, I support the Green New Deal. I'm a climate candidate. And it's funny because, like, I have yet to see a single thing from him that's for Medicare for all. I have none of his advertisements are Medicare for all. None of them. They're all fucking environmental. I wish I had pictures of all these. I'm sure everybody else has seen them on their Facebook. They're all climate oriented, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, dude, you are literally the last fucking person that should be promoting yourself as a climate candidate, because you can't even go to your website and find a single fucking climate policy. It doesn't exist. He doesn't have a climate platform. You're basically, it's false advertising.
Yeah.
And he's so polarizing that he's taking the attention away from actual climate candidates, and it's confusing people into thinking, oh, well, all these people that say they support the Green New Deal are climate candidates, and they're not. They're not fucking climate candidates.
No.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So that's my big, like, if I wanted to say what's my major con with the Green New Deal, as a concept, I like it. I do.
Yeah.
I think we're in agreement there.
Mm-hmm.
As a concept, like I said, who wouldn't support this perfect world where climate change doesn't exist and we're combating it in every aspect of our society? That sounds great. How can I not support that? The biggest problem for me is that as the resolution that was supposed to make this committee, like, what it actually is, like, if you go to the government's website and you look at what's actually being or gonna be voted on, it's a fucking committee. There is no bill. And so when these people say, well, I support the Green New Deal, it's like, okay, you're supporting something hollow. It's like going up and going, what's your platform? Well, I support peace on earth. That's it. Well, that sounds great. I think we're all in agreement. Peace on earth would be great, right?
Yeah.
How are you going to do that? I don't know. We haven't made the committee yet. Okay, well, fuck, that's not a platform. Like, I just, like, you have, so this is your entire thing that you're running on. This is what you're advertising. I'm a climate candidate. And you have no fucking idea of how you're going to accomplish that. Yes. Medicare for all. Fuck you. Like, I can't. Like, that, I thought Bernie was cool. I liked his, left-leaning, liberal, whatever the fuck, socialist ideas. I dig it. I really do. I think we need to shake up the establishment.
Don't get political.
However, if I look at Bernie Sanders on strictly his environmental platform and strictly what he's actually done for the Green New Deal, other than stand next to AOC, because she's this huge polarizing person now, right?
Yeah.
And he just stands next to her and he's like just hoping some of that of attention rubs off on him. He's like, come on, right? I support this Green New Deal. And he's just taking all these pictures and just spamming Facebook, that's all millennials look at, right?
Yeah.
Everything that's on Facebook is true.
Yep.
Right? So he's just spamming fucking millennial Facebook accounts, hoping, well, he's standing next to AOC. He's in a picture with her. It says Green New Deal at the top. I don't need to look for any further information. And then people just keep scrolling. Oh, yeah, he's like, dude, he fucking total climate change. I Googled Green New Deal. It's a great fucking idea. Sounds like they already have a bill. Fucking whatever. He wants to vote for it. But then, you actually find out it's a hollow, gutless, false advertising, propaganda thing. And I'm just like, isn't this all the things you're supposed to be against?
Right.
Isn't this exactly what these billionaires on Wall Street and, Amazon do? Just lie to people, fucking place ads, control public information. I mean, he says he supports the Green New Deal, but the motherfucker can't even come out with anything. He's got nothing. Dude's zero
Yeah.
Fucking zero. He failed the Green New Deal scorecard, and he is pushing of anyone in the like campaign. He's pushing harder than anybody.
Yeah.
He is sucking the Green New Deal dick hard, and he's got nothing, like absolutely nothing, dude. And it just, as you can see, I've ranted and said fuck about 30 goddamn times, but
Yeah.
it
That's Kale's rant for the podcast.
it bothers me. It severely bothers me that you have people who's supposed to be fighting the establishment and fighting, this typical politician, and this is such a classic, typical, windless politician move. It is such a gutless move that
Yeah.
I support all of these things, and when you actually look at the depth of what he says, it's hollow. It's gutless. There's nothing there, and it bothers me. All right, I'm burnt out. You know what? Give us something positive to end on.
Oh, I don't
Something.
know.
Do we have anything positive? Give it to me.
Well, I think. Well, I'm pretty excited about these climate forums that are going to be occurring in September. I think those will hopefully kind of show the truth behind
I hope so.
everybody's
I hope people
climate
watch 'em.
platforms. And
It would show the difference between Inslee and everybody else.
yeah,
You would very easily distinguish who has a climate platform and who the fuck doesn't.
yeah, and I think we need more of these, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't like the I don't like the debate.
Yeah, I don't think
You
anybody
can't get into
does.
it. I like the podcast. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. Like every single candidate, I'm just going out there and I'm listening to podcasts. They give a lot of these guys. They do their campaigns at like colleges and stuff. And so now a lot of these colleges, they'll have somebody either from a news organization like Vox or Vice or CNN or wherever.
Mhm.
They'll go and they'll record them talking, and basically they'll give a sit down podcast, usually for an hour. I think like Jay Inslee's got too many S's. I listened to his was about an hour. It was great. I mean, it allows them to answer questions and kind of get more in depth on what it is they actually want to do.
Where did you see this?
Oh God, I'd have to pull it back up. It was by Vox on the Ezra Klein show.
Huh.
So the Ezra Klein show basically did a hour-long podcast with Jay Inslee. I forget where he was. He was at one of the colleges, but he did a pretty good job.
That's cool though.
I liked it. It gave you more in depth on because it's all, what I like about him is that when he talks about his campaign, it's all climate related, all of it.
Yeah.
In everything.
Mhm.
Sorry. I was talking the whole time and the camera's been on you because I was trying to find the website
Oh.
for everything. So sorry. I'm multitasking. I got to run cameras and do everything else. So, I mean, I guess that's positive to end on. We're going to be doing a lot of podcasts on September. September's going to be fucking huge. It's
And environmental, yeah, discussions.
it's an existential crisis. I border between, we're all fucked. Apocalypse, like we're screwed. This is never gonna fucking happen. And positivity, remain hopeful. Let's fight it. Let's radical change. It could happen. We can, mitigate the worst effects of climate change. Blah blah blah. I balance on it. I'm sure everybody does. Yeah, I mean, some nights I'm like, we're going to fucking do something the next day. We're going to make, that's why we did this podcast. This podcast was actually our attempt we wanted to influence positive change
And discussion.
in discussion in environmental topics that with questions that the average person has,
Mm-hmm.
because you're asking, well, what is the Green New Deal? And a lot of people don't want to spend. I mean, we spent 2 weeks preparing for this. Yeah, I literally read 100 articles on the Green New Deal. I researched its application status for the resolution for 2 fucking hours. Like,
I mean,
it's
this podcast is more than 2 hours, I think.
yeah,
so.
I spent so much time trying to get clarity on it,
Yeah.
and hopefully this allows people to get condensed information. We wanted to be positive.
Yeah.
It's but it's hard. It's how do you take something so existential and end on a positive note when the obvious candidate, is, if you want to see climate change done, is polling at 0.6 fucking percent and isn't even going to get through to the debates, and he's not going to go to the CNN climate talk, which is fucking bullshit. They're having that climate talk because of him and the Sunrise Movement trying to get the debate through the DNC,
Yeah.
and then he's like the main climate candidate, and they're like, yeah, you can't come. Okay, well, fuck you. No, no one's gonna watch the CNN one. Go watch the MSNBC. There you go.
Yeah, screw CNN.
Yeah, screw it. If they won't let Inslee talk at it after we went through everybody's platforms, there's pointless. Okay,
Right.
I'm gonna watch a literal 30-minute stroke fest where they literally just stroke how much they support the Green New Deal, and I'm just gonna lose my mind and throw the remote at the TV. And
Yeah.
that's it. I'm done. It's
Well, hey, positive thing is at least they are talking about climate change in the debates. It is a lot of the candidates do have some kind of climate or environmental reform platform in their campaign.
Beto's gonna be there. He made it.
So I think
Biden did, obviously.
Yeah, and I think that's really important and a good first step into tackling this big existential problem.
After this month, though, after September, because you have, the UN coming here for their climate talks. You have our third debate and 2 climate talks through CNN and MSNBC. I think that's going to shape a lot of my either positivity or negativity for the future. Definitely the election. The election is, you're going to see a big change of if we get, at least hopefully a Democrat with some strong environmental. I mean, we're still a year and a half away, so they can, hint, hint, go in and buff up your policies. Look at it. If you're going to run on climate change, Bernie, talking to you, have a fucking platform, okay, that actually deals with climate change. Don't just, wordlessly support it.
And we're saying that strictly on the environmental aspects of their
correct
platform. We're not
no other aspects of their platform.
We're not just like hating on Republicans or anything like that. It's mainly because they think climate change isn't real. Sorry.
It's a hoax.
So,
well, I got fucking news for you. It's real. Jesus. But anyways, so it's if depending on this year, if we get, a climate,
supporting
president, yeah, there we go. I will be hopeful, and this show will take a much more positive turn. In a year and a half, if this does not, this translates into another 4 years of Trump, and he, completely guts the EPA and
any environmental regulation we have.
Yeah, he's rolling everything back. If he keeps rolling it back, I'm probably going to go buy a bunker somewhere in the woods, and we're just going to start stockpiling water. And this podcast is going to get a lot darker, and we're just going to have to call it's Eco Forge from the hole in the ground in an undisclosed location in, the Russian, fucking Siberia, because that's supposed to be dope after, climate change. We're going to hide in the, backwoods of Russia. Maybe Canada. Canada's nice.
Right.
So from an undisclosed location in Canada or Russia, that's how it's going to go down. And we're just going to go full, preppers on everything. So I'm excited to see. I'm really excited to see how we get through this September. I really am. Anything you're excited for?
I'm really excited about the MSNBC one. Like, I'm not too concerned about the CNN.
They invited everybody, so technically Trump is allowed to go.
Yeah, Trump is allowed to go, and it's really cool because it's going to be an hour long of just that candidate. They're not going to have to deal with bullshit from other candidates.
Yeah, it's not a debate.
Yeah, and so I think that's really important in getting their message across.
Yeah, it gives them an hour uninterrupted to just get into the meat and details of their policy.
And they're taking questions from the audience, which I think is cool too.
Yeah, I saw. That was one thing AOC said is she's helping write some questions for the people to ask, because a lot of people were really pissed with the climate questions that they asked at the debates. They were low balling it.
They
low
weren't
ball.
great.
nobody had any real platform, so they would have screwed up all the questions. I mean,
Right.
but whatever. One thing I want to say that we did change, that I want to do from here on out is, so while we do our research, we're looking at a lot of different places. For anybody that wants further information on one of the topics we covered, I try to save like the most important links from everywhere that I went to collect all of my research. So what I'm going to do is some of my favorite links or where I got a lot of this information, stuff like that, I'm going to put in the description of this video, and I'm going to try to go in and give like a quick description. So if there was one particular thing in this video that you heard that you wanted to look more into yourself, or if you just want to kind of get an idea of where we get a lot of like where we go for a lot of our information, if you are interested in reading your own articles and, educating yourself on the environmental movement, we're going to put all of those things in the link so you people can go through them. So I'll put the Jay Inslee podcast in there. People want to go listen to that. There's some articles that I found were really helpful. I might be able to find the link to the House resolution, the government website that we were talking about, that AOC submitted in February. Anything that you found that you really want to put up that you thought was helpful for you?
I mean, I was just mainly looking at all their campaign pages.
Okay.
So I don't think I have anything too specific that you haven't already
Covered.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So once again, if you guys have any questions, hit us up. If you want to follow us on Facebook or Twitter, we're at EcoForge Podcast on both. Once again, subscribe or hitchhike to this video. It helps us. If you guys want to hear any particular topics, or if there's anything that you want us to look into or cover in the next video, hit us up either on social media or just throw it in the comments of this video. Otherwise, thank you guys for attending. I really appreciate it. Second podcast in the books.
Yay.
Woo! Take care, guys.
Bye.